Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cast episode 88. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm John Cage.
I'm Andy Lewis.
And I'm Rory Summers.
And I'm Sid Gill.
Ooh.
New member.
Is our bouncer on strike or something? Who let him in?
Mate, I get dragged in all over the place nowadays. Steve making up the diversity figures, I think.
That's true, actually. I was thinking about that before. We are no longer like the stereotypical four middle-class white men now.
True. Yeah, you've got a token.
We have a token.
You're more than that, Sid. More than that.
Oh, see, John loves me.
No, he doesn't.
He just said he did.
John's a liar.
We lived together for 5 years, Sid. I think it was 5 years. Quite a while, anyway.
More than that, mate, wasn't it? I'm sure it was more than that.
At least 5 years. And, yeah, you don't go through that without forming some sort of bond or kill each other.
I haven't seen my old roommate for 5 years. I used to live with a guy. I lived with him for about 7 years, and since I moved out, I haven't seen him once. I haven't spoken to him once.
That's a shame.
Went through some good times with him.
Yeah.
Was that the approaching the brandishing a knife in the middle of the night stage then?
Oh, he was a tosser.
So the reason that I invited Sid on was a couple of reasons. Number one, over the last few months, both Rory and John have been fluctuating. So as chance would have it, the 1 week I decided to invite Sid on, everyone's on, because I'm a glutton for punishment, and why not try and edit 5 voices at the same time? How could that possibly be difficult?
But you're so good at it now, Steve.
Well, this is what I do. I just keep adding an extra challenge. Every time I think I'm on top of it, then I'll add something else to make it tougher. But also, we had a really good chat after one of our RPG sessions, and I thought, well, I think most of us have known Sid for far too long, and there was a really good chat about one of the RPG sessions after we had it, and I thought, do you know what? That's proper podcast banter, that is. So
here I am.
It didn't take much persuading to get you on either,
No,
Sid.
it didn't. It was a surprisingly little persuasion, I must admit, Steve. Must be something you put in my beer that day.
I think it's just a good excuse to have a bit of banter with your mates and drink a couple of beers. I mean, that's the reason the rest of us do this.
Well, lockdown has encouraged me to do more Zoom stuff, so...
And drink more beer.
I was about to say, it's definitely encouraged me to drink more beer.
I barely touch the stuff, Rory. Never have beer.
You guys are all just showing off your beer now. I've got my water, being healthy.
Nice.
Vodka, gin.
I'm being healthy. Look, this is just grape juice.
You're literally
John's
all
classing
booze
it up.
hounds.
For the listener, John has just presented a glass of red wine.
A large glass of red wine.
Yes. It was not a half measure, was it, Cage?
No.
It was a bottle with a straw from where I was sitting, wasn't it?
It was less than half a bottle when I poured it.
Is that because the other more than half is now in your glass?
No, I've got a wine wanker, so there's no need to go
wait,
crazy.
What?
Sorry.
You've not got one of these then?
No.
So if you-
Well, I don't know what it is yet, so I don't want to say.
If you don't want to drink a whole bottle in one go, and you don't want it to go
Whoa! Already I'm out.
For those of us that are less alcoholic than you are, Andy, if you just want to drink a bit of a bottle, then you want a way of keeping it fresh for more than one day.
Oh yeah.
So the best way to do it is to get rid of most of the air in the bottle, and for that you need a wine wanker, which is basically a rubber cork with a one-way valve in it and a pump that you put on top, and you go.
It's like a bicycle pump attached to the bottom of your bottle of wine.
To the top, but yeah, something like that. But it looks rude, or at least it looks rude the way I do it.
Yeah, but you do everything looking rude, John.
It's just ingrained now.
It's true. I prefer my method of just drink the lot.
Yeah, I like that method, and that used to be my approach.
I was going to say, John, you've changed, man. You've changed.
You used to be cool.
We never left anything in a bottle of wine. Ever.
No, well, in my defence, it's pretty much just me drinking it now. So it would be a whole bottle. And then dealing with a tiny human that doesn't want to sleep. Ugh, not good. So there you go. Wine wanking. Look it up, people. Actually, probably don't look up that term.
Don't.
There are sections of the internet we must not go.
Good grief.
Oh my.
Is that where you put your car keys, John? Are they at the bottom of a bottle of wine?
No. So that it wasn't strictly my car keys. It was my car card, which is slightly different. But basically, my wallet went missing. The last time I remembered seeing it was in a restaurant on Saturday. And since then, I hadn't seen it. And yesterday, it came to a head because I needed to get back into the office. And I remembered that the only keys that I've got to the office are in my wallet. Yeah, I know. So then we spent basically 24 hours tearing the house apart. Everything, like looking through the washing up. But
and you've only just had that extension finished as well.
We haven't started that.
Oh, right, okay.
But I went through like the recycling bin. I went through all Sammy's clothes that we'd used since then. The cleaners had been, and they always randomly shuffle loads of shit all over the house. So then I was like looking through all the places that you wouldn't ever expect a wallet to be. Definitely haven't been anywhere near this, but just in case, I'll check. And after 24 hours, I was like, there's no way. It's just gone. I'm just going to have to cancel all my cards, and that's it. And then this morning, moving Sammy's seat over to my wife's car, I was leaning over to adjust something, and I looked at the back of the driver's seat and noticed a bulge in the pocket behind the driver's seat, and I just thought, oh yeah, now I remember, on Saturday, that's where I put it.
Dickhead.
Hey,
So
whoa, he's had a kid, mate.
hours.
It's legitimate. That shit
24
happens.
hours of stress. Yeah. Completely unnecessary if I'd just been able to use my memory, which doesn't work anymore because on 4 or less hours sleep a night, it stops functioning, it turns out.
Or, one or more bottles of wine. Or is that kind of the same thing? Bottle of wine, 4 hours sleep. Is that what you call it now? I only have 4 hours of sleep a night.
God, there's no way that I can handle even 1 bottle, I think, let alone 4 bottles in one. Jesus.
Really? Wow.
That'd kill me.
I can take 2 quite readily.
I'm going to go back to John.
Pretty battered.
You've changed a lot.
I'm not going to disagree.
I was thinking this the other day. I can't remember the last time I was actually drunk, the last time I was inebriated. And it's not because it happens so frequently, before you say it, Andy. It's been that long since I've been drunk. I'm so boring these days.
To be fair, it's been quite a while since I've been utterly bollocksed. Like, properly drunk.
It was your birthday the last time, wasn't it?
No. Quite a
Christmas.
fair few times since then. No. I've been a little bit bollocks a couple of times this year. In fact, it was probably actually just before lockdown.
All right, fine, it was yesterday.
No, like properly seriously drunk was like, yeah, probably just before lockdown.
Nah, that's not true. I've been sat in the pub with you since then. When you were
That's
steaming.
true, actually. When?
What,
Was I
one
with the next few weeks ago?
It was your
binge.
birthday outside the pub.
Oh, it was.
But we finished at 4 a.m.
That wasn't that bad then.
Oh, you weren't that bad.
Nice.
I managed to hold my tongue.
You can't do that when you're sober.
True.
Hey, to say how much of a lightweight I am, I met up with Rory on Monday and went to is it the Dice Cup or the Dice Box?
The Dice
I forget
Box.
the name. Dice Box in Leamington Spa. I had 2 bottles of Nanny State, which you'll know is the non-alcoholic
Version of this.
of Dead Pony. Now it's not actually non-alcoholic because I think it's 0.5%.
Yeah.
Shandy, basically.
Halfway through the second bottle, I was like, I think I'm drunk. I'm not sure I can drive home.
You absolute pansy.
Was it not just that you were drunk on the adrenaline from playing board games again, having had
I've
such
gotta
an
admit-
enormous hiatus?
It was quite weird being in both a board game shop and playing board games outside, when I'm in an open venue kind of thing. Or it could have just been as I was in a sugar rush because I'd eaten a massive piece of cake.
It was a big piece of cake.
That'll
with
be
a
it,
lot
then.
of icing on, yeah.
But you can't get drunk from shandy. That's not possible.
Depends what your tolerances are like.
Well, in theory it is, but
Depends how much you drink, Andy. It's like everything else in life, isn't it?
I don't think it's actually physically possible to get drunk from 0.5% shandy because
You
there's
might
so much
drown
water in it.
yourself.
Exactly.
Literally drown yourself
Well,
before
yeah,
you
exactly.
get
You would
drunk.
probably drown before you got drunk.
Oh, but that's not proper shandy. Proper shandy's half and half, isn't it?
you're thinking of Bash Shandy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, bash shandy. There you are. That's the stuff.
Fucking along with the Panda Pops. Jeez, man.
That's it, yes.
Right, well, Sid is definitely one of us. because look at the banter. We're I don't know, 15 minutes in.
15 minutes in,
and we haven't talked or even really mentioned board games.
I threw that reference in for good measure.
Yeah,
it doesn't count. It's not a board game. That's
well,
just
we
mentioning
didn't talk
that
about the board game. We were just in a shop.
Exactly.
Yes. Let's talk about some board games then, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah.
I only have one piece of news this week, unfortunately.
There's not really much going on at the moment, is there?
Do we still get the music?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. There we go.
Oh, anything to keep him happy. Look how happy he looks there. Look at the
does.
grin on
Doesn't
his
take a lot
face.
these days.
Half a bottle of wine, apparently.
Not even that.
Wow.
So, a mysterious timer appeared online about a week or so ago, before we recorded, saying there was a new Heroquest coming out. And it's not the Heroquest mentioned in our last episode. It's actually Hasbro re-releasing it. And they made an announcement, I think it was just yesterday, the proper announcement came out. And so Hasbro are re-releasing HeroQuest, the classic game from 1989.
Whoa, sold!
With entirely new art, entirely new miniatures.
Including the gargoyle.
But
It's the but is, it's exactly the same game.
right, okay.
So, I mean, HeroQuest was brilliant when you were like 10. But these days it's kind of like roll and move.
No, we don't want to do that.
No.
And this has been
how disappointing.
Is it like a pseudo crowdfunding thing on Hasbro Pulse or something like that?
Yeah, Hasbro, which is a bit weird. So Hasbro have got their own crowdfunding website, which let's be fair,
for the games that they're going to release anyway.
Yeah. So it really is
it's a pre-order system.
Pre-order system, yeah. What's really interesting is when people sell that it's had a funding goal of $1 million. And everyone went, oh, that's a ridiculous funding goal. Well, it hit it in less than 24 hours.
Yes. Hang on, a ridiculous funding goal. Let's look at Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, anything by Awaken Realms, anything pretty much by Simon.
Yeah.
Just goes to show how confident they are.
So I'm actually a little bit disappointed because I was hoping for a bit of a rework, like a modern take on it, but it sounds like it is just exactly the same game.
Wasn't the original done by MB, not Hasbro?
Yeah, Milton Bradley, but I think Hasbro, via a long line of buyouts, Hasbro ended up buying Milton Bradley or owning Milton Bradley's games a while ago.
Right.
So what's the pledge level of that? I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to work out how much I think it would be before you tell me.
Go on then. Take a guess. If you were to buy the game, you have to say in dollars because it's only in dollar price.
Right, I'm going to say $70.
What? No. I reckon 40.
Well, Rory was closer.
No.
$100 US.
What?
It's in 2 pledge levels. So one comes with basically more, with the expansions, I think it is. And you can't buy it in Europe. It's only available in US and Canada. And apparently, the shipping to Canada is $135.
What, to drive it over a bridge?
Jesus.
That's...
I go there a lot, Steve. I'll bring you one back in my suitcase.
Be your mule.
It's an interesting mule life, I must admit. I can't see myself getting stopped very often.
No, you're not going to get stopped at the airport with that, are you, really?
Well, it depends where I put the miniatures, I suppose, doesn't it, really?
And if you do that, we do not want them.
I'm not sure they're going to get sniffer dogs looking for, like, meeples or anything like that. I think you'd probably be all right.
True. Well, there's a really good games cafe in Ottawa, actually, that I was trying to get to when I was over there.
Oh, is it
it's
Snakes and
amazing.
Lattes?
Oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's right in the middle of the town, near the old town. It was like round the corner from the apartments we were staying in. And it was like you spent, I think, we paid about $10 or $5 or something to get in, and then time to play that was racks. There's more games than you have, Steve.
I love that you mentioned some random place in America, and Steve is straight away, is it this one?
To be fair, it's Canada.
Yeah, Snakes and Lattes is it's a chain of cafe bars now, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the first one, though.
Was it?
Well, maybe not the very first one, but the first one that made a thing out of it and, really pushed this idea of a board game cafe. But I thought it was Toronto. But as you said, Rory, I think it's a chain now, so maybe it's a chain.
They do distribution as well now for Canada.
Isn't there one over here now? I'm sure I've heard of Snakes and Lattes over here. I remember thinking it's a bloody clever name.
I think that's half the thing about a board game cafe, isn't it?
good
Trying
name.
to think of a silly name for it.
Yeah, it has to be a clever one.
I think my favourite UK one is Chance and Counters.
Yes, that's a good one.
That's my favourite.
Where's that? Is that Brum? No,
Oh, I think it's Oxford Way.
that's right. Yes, it's not a million miles from us. I know that.
I think this is quite a boring name now that I've brought it up, I'm afraid. I've had to Google it.
Go on then, Sid. What we got?
It's called the Loft Board Game Lounge.
Yeah, that's not very good.
No, it's a
No.
bit disappointing, really, isn't it?
Comparatively.
Next time I'm in there, I'm going to tell them to change the name. That's what I'll do.
Oh, speaking of slightly more local board game cafes, it is Alora's birthday on Monday, the 28th.
Happy birthday, housemate.
Yes, she's very excited. Although all of the recent lockdown laws have ruined all of our plans, but never mind. So as a thing to do, we're going to Shrewsbury to see Nerdy again, because we went there before lockdown, obviously, and before all the flooding earlier this year, because they got really badly affected by that, and they've just been basically spending the last 6 months doing the place up again. I think he managed to rescue all of his board games before the place got too wet, move them all upstairs. But they're open now, and they're in Shrewsbury. It's a really, really, really good board game cafe, actually. Excellent coffee, brilliant cake. It's only about £1 or £2 to play all day, which is really good. And the board game selection there is fantastic. It ranges all the way from something like the Simons Game of Trains all the way up to stuff like Scythe. And we're going on Monday.
They can be really great, can't they? The cafes. Steve and I were there in the dice box on Monday, and Steve and I were just staring at the shelf. We'd finished the game, and we were just both sat there, just like longingly looking at the shelf. Go, I want to play that one. I want that one. I want to play that one.
Yeah.
It's the fact that I started at the very first shelf, and before getting to the end of the first shelf, I'd picked out 4 games I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And that's like 40 shelves further on. I was like, okay. You have to
We
come
could
back
be here a
aren't I?
while, yeah. Yeah.
It's when the staff come over and say, do you want a bit of help choosing one? You're like, I'd like to choose all of them and then stay here and play all of them. But I can't.
They do get a bit funny with me in the dice box, because whenever I go in, I normally take my own game. So, Rory, we've got all of these. Why do you have to keep bringing in your own ones in?
Because you don't have this one.
My ones are better.
No one's touched this one.
I went balls deep on the Kickstarter and got this coin. Have you got
Exactly,
this coin?
yes. Mine doesn't have an extra special meeple and metal coins.
If it's not got the shit pimped out of it, then I'm not interested. Thank you very much.
Exactly. It's the way forward.
Talking about some overly pimped board games. The one game actually 3 of us have managed to play is a little game called Tellstones,
Yes.
which the Google Doc wanted to correct to gallstones every time I typed it.
Lovely. That's a different game. Not even really a game.
Not really, no.
Haven't you done a video about this, Steve?
I have done a video about this, yes. And I was rather impressed with myself, because after me and John, you're John, me and Andy had been talking about like ways in which we could like do videos, and Andy had mentioned about doing an auto cue. So basically, when I recorded that, I spent most of Sunday trying to jerry rig up an iPad stand. So the iPad could be just below the camera. Because if the auto cue is anywhere but just below that camera, you can see your eyes are looking off in the distance. And I had to record it 3 times, because every time I record it, I look back at the video and think, it looks like I'm staring over there in the corner rather than at the camera. And every time I moved it a little bit closer. But I mean, when I say jerry rigged, it's jerry rigged. It's like a really cheap iPad stand we bought off Amazon ages ago, which isn't strong enough to actually hold the iPad, so it just actually collapses under its own weight.
Duct tape it to a brick.
Yeah, basically, it's duct taped to the camera stand.
That's it.
You have to do lots of really short takes, because every time it's like it's starting to just droop into shot.
But I realised too late, if you watch the video, there's I do some close-up shots of the components. If you look at one of them, you can see my thumb in the top right-hand corner, which I didn't realise until after I posted it to YouTube.
Oops.
Oh, well.
I'm sure there have been worse atrocities made in video reviews of things.
There have been, and even in films. Like, leaving a Starbucks cup in the one of the feasts in Series 8. That was clever.
Oh, Game of Thrones, yeah.
Hey, spoiler tag, man.
Well, have you seen that? The gas cylinder in Gladiator's the big one, isn't it? One of the first ones I spotted.
Well, they had the it was in Lord of the Rings. There's a Mini Cooper in the background somewhere.
Really?
As they're running through the forest, there's like a red Mini Cooper just like over there.
Seriously? Oh, I'm gonna have to watch these films again now.
In Commando, there's a scene where he's running across the lawn to assault the house, and one of the baddies gets blown up in inverted quotes, but you can see underneath where he lifted off, there's like a pad that lifts up. You can see like the gas lift that launched him.
Commando's really bad as well because there's several times when you can tell they've recycled the same footage of the guy getting shot, just changed it, that just mirrored the image, just make it look a different actor.
It's a classic.
But Tellstones, yes.
Tellstones, yes. We digress.
Tellstones is a really, really simple game. You've got a series, I think it's 7 tokens.
Yes.
Each one with a different symbol on them. And in turn, you're going to give instructions to the other player to manipulate these tokens. And the idea is what you're going to do is you're going to put them face down onto a line between you and somehow shuffle them around. And then to score points, you challenge your opponent to guess what symbol is under a particular token. And then there's a really clever thing as well. What you do is if you're feeling really confident, you can do what's called the boast, where you basically go, I know what all of them are.
Did Andy go for that every time?
No.
I don't think you did you, Andy?
No,
actually?
I didn't go for it once.
That surprises me.
And then there's a little bit of a to and fro with that, because what you can do is someone boasts, you can say, I agree with you, I believe you, and you give them a point. Or you can say, go on then, prove it. Or you can say, well, I know what they all are as well. And then the other player who originally boasted has to say they believe you or get you to prove it. But if you do the boast and you get them all right, you win the game outright. If you get a single one wrong, you lose the game outright.
Ooh.
There's a bit of a gamble with the boast.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. And anyway, I didn't need to boast, John. I just relied on Steve's infinitely bad memory to let me win the game.
See, that makes me feel really bad because I was watching the video with Steve and you were saying you could play this game in about 5 minutes. And Steve and I played it twice. And I think each game took us about 20 minutes to play because we're both equally crap with memory. Why is this so hard? There's only 3 symbols.
If you want to make yourself feel better, you should play me at that sometime.
It's just like...
Guys, I still check my pants for my name, for goodness sake. Right? So I don't know if babies are the common theme between
That is
three
a
of
good
us.
point.
I don't know what Steve's excuse is.
Yeah.
I think I'm just getting early Alzheimer's, to be fair. It's terrifying.
Who are you people? What am I doing here?
I got admit, playing this game against Amanda was just horrible.
I could
Because
imagine
Amanda's
that.
got a brilliant memory. So Amanda was just like, I know all of them. And 9 times out of that 10, I had to go, well, yeah, I believe you. I'm just going to have to give you the point because I know you know what they all are. I haven't got a clue.
Yep.
Yeah, I can imagine this. I can imagine that being very frustrating. I think for me, that is one of the shortcomings of this game is I don't think it's possible to really get better at it. If you play it and you are not good at memory games, you are never going to be good at memory games. And when you're playing against someone who is good at it, it's boring for both of you.
I don't think I'm going to like this game.
It's a very clever game, but I think you're right, Rory. Once if you get to the point where you can remember stuff, you're not going to get any worse, and you're not going to get any better. It doesn't matter how many times you shuffle this thing around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is a clever game because there's some really clever things with the rules, which are really subtle. Like, for instance, you do not manipulate the pieces yourself. You tell your opponent to manipulate them.
And you don't touch them.
So you can't be accused of shenanigans. Yeah. So you just point at them and you go, move that one there, swap those 2 and put that one on. The other one is, again, another subtle rule, which it's difficult to get at first, is you don't name them. The rules are quite clear. It says you point at the piece you want to move or add or hide.
It's like you're in a foreign delicatessen. You don't know the language. I just want that one. You smile and point,
and then speak more loudly.
Exactly.
No, not that one. The one with the cream on.
I feel like this is the sort of game. I watched your video, Steve, and I reckon it's one that could scale up. You know, those World War II map rooms where you have to push the little ships across the table. That's all I could think of was like wrens stood around a big table moving different pieces under your command as some kind of general.
I like that image.
Oh man,
I tell you what, Sid, you need to look at a game called War Room. Because War Room is effectively that.
Oh, mate, I'm Googling it right now.
It's a giant board with like hundreds and hundreds of pieces. It's supposed to represent like World War, and you're manipulating an entire World War.
superb.
That sounds amazing.
I reckon you probably could scale Tellstones up, though, if you got like 3 sets of it and had it, 7x3 or something, and just move 2 random pieces around. That would be good.
No, no.
I would. It would break a lot of people, but it would be, for people like Amanda whose brains still work, I think it might be quite more of a challenge.
She'd have no competition for it, though. Like, she might do okay.
Not with
it.
us, no.
Hey, guys, I don't want to be the kind of the newbie on the block here, but so far, boys are crap and girls are good.
One example. Let's just
say, maybe we need to find some more girls to try against and throw them at Amanda and see what happens.
You're going to throw women at Amanda?
Well, metaphorically speaking.
Right. You're too good at games.
I pick a Laura.
Yeah, she might. Yeah, yes. She might do quite well. I don't know. Depends if her memories are good or not. I don't know. No, actually,
Laura can just see through the systems of Eurogames.
She can in some of them, but not all of them. Weirdly, she does a lot of them, but she can't do paladins at all. Like absolutely batter her at paladins, and yet something like raiders. No, I can't beat her. I don't know why. They're very similar systems, but they're just I can't beat her at it. But anyway, it's weird how our brains work. But yeah, with Tellstones, I think that the issue is that if you don't name them, because if you name it, then it kind of cements it in your brain.
Yeah. It's why I think the rules are really clever.
Yeah, no, I agree, absolutely. It's like going to a lecture. If you go to a lecture and write stuff down, you're more likely to remember it.
No.
Because I said more likely, John, not certainly.
No.
So John, you're using the excuse of like baby brain to affecting your memory, but you're saying you couldn't understand, you couldn't remember lectures, which suggests it's more of a deep-seated issue.
Yes.
No, I think there are multiple things that can cause this. Serious alcoholism is the other one.
Yes.
Which, I was at uni, so...
We were all at uni, John. I agree with you. I can't even remember what I did.
So the other thing about Tellstones is it's almost overproduced.
What?
Because it comes in this nice little metal tin, and it's got this lovely little velvet playmat, and all the pieces are these really heavy ceramic, chinky pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody pointed out on the video in a reply, you could play this with 7 playing cards. You don't need all the fancy components.
That's very true, actually. Yes, you could.
But they are lovely, I must admit.
How expensive is it?
I think it's €30.
That's not bad.
I was about to say, because if it's cheap, but it's well produced, then that seems like an okay kind of thing. But €30 for something that could be done with 7 playing cards sounds less reasonable.
You couldn't do it quite as well with 7 playing cards. Because with playing, I think it'd be easier to remember 7 random numbers or face cards, especially because everyone's familiar with, Jack, Queen, King, and then the numbers 1 through 10. Whereas these are, a knight's head and a sword and a shield. I think you'd need 7 cards. You could get, if you've got 7 blank cards and wrote something on them.
Yeah.
Or if you took code names and took 7 random cards out of it and did it that way.
That could work.
That could work as well.
Okay.
But
that'd be even more confusing because Codenames has another name on the back of the card.
Yeah.
You need to scribble one out.
No, leave it on.
Keep them both on. Just to confuse matters.
Yeah.
And then you've got a little grid that shows which ones are yours.
Oh, God, no, right.
Move on. So Tellstones is pretty good, but yeah, it's a fair point. You could definitely do it with just 7 bits of paper and some symbols. But yeah, £30 for what you get is probably quite good.
I think but you're paying for the for the pimpiness of the game.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
I think when you compare it to something like another 2-player game like Jaipur, for example, Jaipur is under 15 quid, and that is a really solid, really good 2-player game. That, to be honest, I would rather play Jaipur than play Tellstones. I think it's more interesting.
What does Jaipur involve other than being a beer?
That is
Jaipur,
you're trying to trade resources. Essentially, just to really briefly, you've got a hand of cards and you're trying to set collection and when you cash in your sets when you feel you've got enough of them to take tokens, and then it's the most amount of points of tokens worth. And rubies are worth more than cloth, and those are your sets. So a completely different game, but my point is it's a 2-player game. I think Jaipur has a very good production value for the type of game it is, whereas Tellstones has an incredibly high production value for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is twice the price of the other.
See, now you've put it like that, you're damn right.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree. Because I learned to play Jaipur, actually. Laura and I sort of borrowed it from a friend, and we took it on holiday. And yeah, Jaipur's really, really good. And if you say, as you say, for 15 quid, I think I'm going to side with you on that one and say, yes, it's a better game.
Yeah.
Better bang for buck.
Yeah, and I enjoyed Tellstones. When Steve brought it round, we played the first game, enjoyed it, and it was like, oh, let's play that again. I was very happy to play it a second time, but I think after my second game of it, for me, I was like, I've got as much as I'm going to get out of this game. Yeah. It might have been because we had a stack of other games on the table that we're going to play, and I think had we gone to the pub and we just like, we're going to wait for Andy and John and Sid to arrive, let's play a game. Because we've only got a few minutes, Tellstones
well, if you're
would
waiting
be better.
for Sid to arrive, you've got more than a few minutes.
Right.
That's true.
Be steady on, mate. That's not for my personal life.
So,
Look, if you're on the podcast, you're fair game.
He's right.
Hey, I wasn't warned about that.
oh, did you not? Did you not know this?
So did I not send the contract over?
I feel like I've signed something without knowing what it said.
Oh, you have. You have basically forfeited all of your human rights to be on this podcast.
Yeah, and warning's cheating.
No, I think you're right, Roy. Actually, I think Tellstones would get old very quickly, and you would stop playing it, and you wouldn't play it again.
You take a big break from playing it. I mean, it does fit that niche. It's one of those. If you're having lunch break games, I often do. We've played this game. It's taken 40 minutes. It's not worth starting another game now. I've got Tellstones, but it only takes 5. Let's play that instead. It really fits that niche for me.
Or an end of night game.
Yeah.
You're right. Actually, it's a good pub game because as long as you don't use the little velvet playmat, because you don't actually need that to play
that's a good point, yeah.
Those tokens would be good because, if you've got spilt beer on them, you can just,
wipe them
dry,
off,
no problem. Yeah. So it's actually a really good pub game.
Good shout.
Good pub game, good filler game.
And it would get more entertaining the more alcohol you had because you'd get more forgetful.
More forgetful.
Yeah. Maybe it's like pool. You have more beer to a point and you get better at it. You have one more beer and then you're dreadful.
Could be.
It's worthy of a scientific experiment, that, Andy.
I agree. I shall take that on.
Involving a lot of beer.
Yes.
Don't forget the game.
15 pints is a sweet number. John, we're over here.
So that's Tellstones. It's available only direct from the Riot merch store. You might want to go get Mechs versus Minions while you're there. Just saying.
No, you do want to go and get that game. There's no might.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Indeed.
Just do.
All right, let's move on. What's next?
Well, in another session at Steve's house, I brought round a new game from Hexy Studios. Now, a few years ago, Steve and I played Cave-In, the Star Scrappers Cave-In game that we reviewed a few years ago, which is a card-based game from Hexy Studios where you're basically mining stuff, planet, and with a bit of player interaction, there's a slight bit of pushy look. If you go too far in the game, you cause a cave-in, the whole thing collapses and everybody in the cave dies out or gets thrown out, etc., etc. And we quite enjoyed it, although having backed it, I've never actually
I quite
played
like
it since.
Cave-In.
I know, it's on my shelf of shame.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
We did like it, that's the thing. We came to the conclusion it doesn't really work with 2. It needs more than 2. So Orbital is kind of the next game in the Star Scrappers series. It's called Orbital at the moment, although the rulebook, because this is a kind of a Kickstarter game, the actual rulebook says Space Station.
It's a re-implementation of Space Station.
There you go then, that'll be why. Basically, if you've played Galaxy Trucker and or Farlight, it's basically that game. So the bit where you're building, you're sticking things together and you start with a hub in the middle and you put things on the end, it's that bit of it. So forget the frantic taking up tiles in Galaxy Trucker, that doesn't happen. You get a bunch of cards in a market.
Do you need lots of
and
those?
in your hand. You need some, not necessarily lots. And you can take an action during the game to put one of these or more of these things on your space station, and it gives you an ability or it'll get you some resources or whatever. And ultimately, points win prizes at the end of the game. The more of these things you have, the more actions you can do, so the more points you can ultimately acquire. But it's designed by the guy who did Terra Boring Mars. And you can tell.
Go on.
Because it's exactly the same mechanic.
Right.
I would explain this game as Terraforming Mars Lite.
Oh.
Okay.
That's similar. Now, how many of you have actually played Terraforming Mars?
Pick me.
Don't think I have, actually.
No.
No, I don't think I have.
I've heard some things about Terraforming Mars that makes me not want to play Terraforming Mars.
I feel like I've played it vicariously because I've heard you guys bitch about it so much.
To put it into context, it's one of the most popular games of the last 3 years, or 4 years. You know, there's expansions out the wazoo. It's near the top of the Board Game Geek charts. It's constantly on the most played list. It's an extremely popular game.
We don't know
Me
why.
and Andy don't like it because we don't know why.
Well, I don't think
so
it's not
popular.
that I don't like it. I just don't understand why people find it so fascinating. It's okay, but it's not that good.
And this is like a lighter version of that, is how you describe it.
This is a much
Yes.
lighter version, yeah. It's got the same kind of thing in which you get dealt some cards and there's a market of cards, and you'll have a resources to add cards to your space station, and those cards will do other things. A little engine building kind of thing. So each one of the cards does something else. And adding a certain amount of cards gives you more resources, which allow you to buy more cards. My problem with it is you felt like, apart from the first turn of the game, when you start with your starting cash, you felt like you didn't have any resources to do anything. So the first turn, you splurge and build as big a space station as you can. The second round, you go, oh,
I've got no money left.
I don't have any money left. Right. When do we get money? Oh, we don't.
Okay. Yeah, you get a little bit at the end of each round, or the start of each round, which way around it is. But it's not very much, and it's not usually enough to actually do anything useful. So you need to start building facilities that will get you money, or at least have a facility where you can put a little chap, because you have some staff. One has staff on the space station, and you can put staff, basically action spaces, and they'll do whatever the action of that spot is. And some of them will give you money, some of them will give you like more staff, some of them will give you resources or a free card, or staff for stuff.
Staff.
Yes, staff.
Staff.
Definitely staff.
Staff. There's no R in staff.
It's a long-running joke on this podcast whenever we mention brass, or brass as you
Brass. It's set in Lancashire. It's brass.
brass.
It's only your elocuted tones, John, that think of it as brass.
Exactly. I'm just pulling this podcast up.
No, you're not.
No. I'm not kidding.
Not
Who am
with
I
the
kidding?
combined weight of the four of us now. So
And yeah, so it did feel like a constant scrabble for money, to the point where I think it drove our strategies fairly strongly. Now, the next couple of times we played it, it was better. And we got a bit more fluid, and we felt we could do a little bit more with the game, but it still did feel a little restricted in terms of actually being able to buy stuff. And the market was quite clever in a way that when you usually in a standard market, you'll buy a card and take the card, and then the market will refresh or everything will budge up. But this one didn't. So what happened was everything sort of shoved down. So in buying a card, it actually made the rest of them comparatively cheaper. So they you have 5 cards, and it costs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah. If you buy, say, the 4th one, the 5th, the one that cost 5 moves up and now only costs 4. So, for example, everything basically shoves up, and you don't refresh it. So the person after you buying a card would obviously get a cheaper card, but they might not get the one they wanted. So it was an interesting idea. It took Stephen a little bit of time to get a head around. I was like, hang on a minute, how does that? Oh, it makes it cheaper, right?
This is really unfair. Oh, cheaper, you say? Okay.
Yes. But the thing is, it still didn't make it that attractive, I don't think, because buying a card you obviously have to pay cash for, and then in order to put something on your space station, you had to pay cash for as well.
You have to pay cash for the installation of the card.
Yes, exactly. Some of the cards did make things cheaper, but it was very limited, and obviously you're still at the mercy of the deck, and you have to have it in your hand, and yada yada yada. So it still felt very, very difficult to actually get something from the market and actually make use of it.
You say it's an engine builder. So were your difficulties, do you think, due to a poorly built engine that didn't generate cash, or do you not have enough avenues do you think to generate cash?
Both.
Right.
Everything.
All of
No,
the
I agree
above.
because it felt at first. We played it a few times actually because it's quite a quick game.
All right.
We managed to get it down to about half an hour, didn't we?
Yeah.
By the last game, the first time we played it, we splurged all our cash at the opening round. You know, it felt like that time you buy a family pack of crisps and you eat it all, and then go, "Oh shit, that was supposed to last me all day." It felt like that. It was just gone, and it's like, "Oh, I don't have any more cash to buy anything else."
It's a great analogy.
How
It's
often
one
does
we
that
can
happen,
all
Steve?
relate to.
How's that happen?
Frequently. It's like this
frequently,
sharing
yeah.
bag of crisps. Sharing? What? No. This is one portion for me.
Is this sharing with my left and right hand?
Exactly.
This is Andy, whole tub of ice cream before the podcast. Lewis.
Hey, don't scare. Laura did exactly the same thing the other night. She smashed down an entire tub of Ben and Jerry's just lying on the sofa watching telly. So it's not just me. I feel better now.
Just because other people are wrong doesn't make you any less wrong, you know.
It makes me feel better though.
Yeah, okay.
Right, hang on. We were talking about a point. We were making a point now, weren't we?
I
What
don't
was
have
it?
lost my point now.
Cash.
So yeah, once on the second time we played it through, I think both of us went right. We're not going to spend as much cash right at the start, and we still ended up coming up across the same problem because it was so expensive to build. And you had to expand the space station because that's how you got points. That's how you get more cash. That's how you get more abilities. But it felt like it was so expensive, and you kept looking at your cash and then planning. Right, I was basically starting the round and going, right, I need the 6 credits to build this expansion, so let's put 6 to one side because if I don't keep that, I'm going to spend it on something. To give it a comparison, actually, with Terraforming Mars, in Terraforming Mars, you can sell your cards back to the market. You don't get much for them, but you get something.
Yeah.
And it felt like it missed that. It felt like it missed that way of sacrificing something to get more cash. By the end of the game, I had this hand of like 20 cards. I was like, well, I can't spend them.
You can't do
why have I
anything
got so
with
many
them.
cards?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, and that was a problem because I mean, if you got dealt 5 crap cards to start with, or at least 5 cards you couldn't really do anything with, because it definitely felt like some cards were better earlier on, and some cards were better later on. Because like there was some cards that got you extra meeples, which is really good, useful earlier on because it means you can start spamming them out and getting resources earlier on. In the last round of the game, it's bloody pointless because you can't really do very much. Like, you can put this thing here and build another thing. So I don't need that, for example. So you were slightly at the mercy of the deck. Obviously, there's the filter of the hand, but yeah, getting rid of crap cards you didn't need and cycling them through, or putting them back into the market so that you make them available to other players, I think would be a slightly better element.
Now, we do have to put the caveat on. This was a prototype version that's coming to Kickstarter.
Yes.
So, of course, what we played may not be what that version is that comes to Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So that might have changed. I'm hoping that aspect of it's changed, but we'll see.
Yes. So, I mean, we've obviously played it with a 2-player for COVID restriction reasons. Unfortunately, we couldn't play it with any more. I think we should probably say that. And I think it would probably benefit from more players because there'd be a bit more interaction in the market, a bit more interaction with... Because there are kind of cue cards as well. Like, I can play this and take a meeple from Steve's... stash, for example, put him on a coffee break and force him to eat a sausage roll, and obviously there would be a bit more player interaction with that.
Yeah, I had the laser at one point, which means I could actually blow up sections of your space station, which I thought felt really cruel to the point where I didn't actually play it because I thought it's been so difficult actually building anything on this space station. It's so expensive. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to discard that one.
Oh, Steve.
No, I felt the same way because I had one that basically snaffled your resources and basically just put all of your meeples into bed or whatever. And I thought, no, that's just really cruel because I'll basically screw him for 2 turns. And I thought there's no point because that means that the game is now a cakewalk for me. Nice, but when you're trying to learn a game and trying to understand how it works and what you can do with it, I thought that was a bit silly. With 4 players, probably better because you can kind of share the pain around a bit.
Yeah.
I don't understand. You had opportunities to dick Steve over and you didn't use them. And same to you, Steve. I don't get it.
Hilariously, I did build a shield in the second game, so he couldn't do it.
Just in case.
Yeah. The gloves came off on the second game.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
they like damaged one of his sections, and
Yes, you did.
then the shields came out.
Yeah, it's like, right,
Yeah.
oh no, okay, that's your game, is it, Tudor? Right, we're having less of that.
Right,
So I
stop
said,
that.
right, your work is f***ing off, and I'm going to put these two in the casino to make some money. So yeah, it was a nice
Casino
idea.
on a space station.
Yeah, exactly. There was. There
Yeah,
were like,
that was actually the best way to make money. I think the second game we both had a casino because
Oh,
it was the
right.
only way to get regular income.
yes, exactly. Put a worker in the casino to basically spend his wages so you can spend it building a gun.
You sound surprised, but I mean, Deep Space Nine, Quark.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
I take it all back.
Yeah,
Mm,
there's precedent there.
that's true. That's fair. But yeah, I don't know. I think we both walked away feeling not terrible, but not fascinating either.
Yeah, I think that
Fair
was
enough.
my headline as well. It's like I'd play it again, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like I'm not going to be back in the Kickstarter. Let's put it that way.
No, I agree.
So interestingly, it goes up to 6 players as well, and that's quite a decent player count, actually. I'd imagine 6 players at that, the market would move rapid.
I don't know, because again, we barely touched the market.
Really? So do you,
Yeah, I mean,
do you
because it was so
gain
expensive.
cards anyway every turn? Or?
Yeah,
Mm.
you get dealt some random cards at the end of every time, and basically we both played just playing our random cards we were given because it was so expensive to play a card.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what makes me feel as if either something needs to change or we missing.
Misinterpreted something.
I feel as if either we misinterpreted the strategy or misinterpreted the rules, but we double checked the rules and it was like, no, that's definitely right. So I think we misinterpreted the strategy at some point. It did feel like we were skint the entire game, but I've played Terraforming Mars and I've played games of that when it feels like, right, this card cost me 25 credits to play. I've got 3 credits.
Yeah, okay.
So I feel as if it's like intrinsic in that. I can't remember the designer's name. But
Jacob
That-
Furlaxis, or what it was
Something
called,
like
for
yeah,
Frixelius.
that's it. So maybe that's part of his game design philosophy.
But yeah, kind of meh. That was Orbital from Hexy Studios.
So, haven't you guys been playing some RPGs? Because obviously I've not, but I hear you guys have.
Not me.
We've been playing quite a few.
We've had loads on lockdown. It's been awesome.
It's made me quite jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
You
says
left the
through
group.
gritted teeth.
And rightly so.
I had to leave the group for my own sanity.
Yeah.
It was bad enough knowing that you guys were enjoying playing RPGs without me, let alone seeing a daily reminder of, yeah, really, really excited about the next RPG that we're going to play again today. Like, you only played one yesterday. It's only been one day.
It got to the point, actually, Sid and I decided to make a conscious decision because we were playing something like 3 or 4 times a week and we were getting complaints from our flatmates. So we had to basically knock it down a peg. So we can only do it twice a week now.
That still sounds like twice more than I ever get to do. It's okay. It'll get better. It'll get better.
See,
So-
there's always brandy in the milk, John. I've told you that.
Yeah, but Kaz doesn't really like milk. She's off the dairy. But you guys have played some RPGs, so tell me about some RPGs.
So we have played a brand spanking new RPG, which Kickstarter backers got recently. I think the physical copies actually still haven't been delivered,
Oh, really?
so it is proper brand spanking new. Yes. So we played Heart, which is I think the company's called Rowan Deck and Dice. Publish it now. Those who know their RPGs, it is a kind of sequel to Spire. It's set in the same universe. And what this game is, it's kind of a batshit crazy take on the Underdark. Concept is you are all underground and you are below the spire. So the spire is a high elf kind of stronghold in which all the dark elves are like subjugated and they're slaves and such like. So Spire is all about you doing things to try and like piss off the high elves. Whereas Heart is kind of like the basis is the magic is kind of leaked down from the Spire into the Underdark. But right at the very centre of the Underdark is this thing called the Heart. It never quite explains what the Heart is. It kind of gives you a few options what it could be. But it's kind of either some giant alien artifact or some portal to another dimension or a sleeping god or something like that. But it's something of immense power which changes the reality of the things around it.
Okay.
Basically, the deeper you go, the weirder shit gets.
Right.
So at the top layers of the Underdark, things are kind of like people eking out survival in caves. You get towns, you get settlements and such like. But as you get further and further down, you get things like forests made of hydra heads, or tunnels which you realise suddenly are actually made of meat with teeth and mouths and things like that in, and it just gets weirder and weirder.
Sounds like my cup of tea. Go on.
So, the other thing is to remember is, that's different about this game, is everyone is just wrong in the head, because the concept is that no one goes dungeon crawling who is normal.
Okay.
So everyone is either down in the Underdark because, the city beneath it calls it, not the Underdark. It actually doesn't call it the Underdark in this book. You're down underground because either you are driven by something, either some mad obsession that you've got, or you are being forced to go down there. And that's kind of your character background. That's what drives your character forward. Whatever this obsession is. So when you generate a character, you pick one of these driving forces. Mm-hmm. Then you pick a class, and the classes are just as bonkers because none of them are standard at all. I mean, the most standard one was the one Andy played, which was the Junk Mage, which is a wizard, effectively. But other characters included things like a Knight, which uses magical train parts as armour, a Wizard, which uses possessed bees.
A Druid, then.
Yeah. And, Sid was reasonably conventional. Sid was like a policeman, but it ends up that none of the policemen are actually policemen. They're all people who've killed previous policemen and stolen their badge.
Fallen paladins, then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ish.
So it's all a bit weird like that.
And is it weird for the sake of being weird, or does all that weirdness kind of come together?
Yes.
Right.
No, it feels like it's weird for the sake of being weird. I mean, it has a reason. The whole reason of the weirdness is it says it's built into the story. This heart is changing reality, so the changing of reality is what makes it weird.
Right.
So in that regard, you can say, yes, it's part of the story, but I would argue, yes, it is weird for the sake of weird.
Mm.
And some of the concepts it comes with, I think, are absolutely brilliant. I mean, you guys never saw 90% of what's in the main rulebook, but there's some really cool concepts in there and cool ideas. As a game, it's actually very, very simple. Your stats are merely just tick boxes. So you have skills and domains. And what happens is whatever the skill test is, regardless of whether it's combat or you're trying to manipulate someone verbally, is you take one dice, you get an extra dice if you're using the right skill, take an extra dice if you're in the right domain, and then you can take an extra dice if you've got what's called a knack, which basically means like a level 2 in something, or if you're being assisted. You roll them, and then the difficulty removes the highest dice. So if it's an easy test, you keep all the dice. Mm-hmm. If it's like one level of difficulty, then you remove the highest dice. If it's 2 levels of difficulty, you remove the next 2 dice. And then whatever is the highest dice is your level of success at that test.
That sounds like quite a cool idea.
Yeah, okay.
It's really, really simple. So every single test is just these dice. Now, where it gets the damage is where it gets interesting. So everything is measured on what's called stress. So whenever you do something, whenever you hit something with a weapon, you do stress to the enemy, which your weapon will have D6 stress. So, roll a D6, you do that much stress to it. When the players get stressed, they get stressed in actually several different categories. So the obvious one is body, which is, them being hit with a sword from the enemy. But you can also lose your sanity, which I think is mind. You can start succumbing to the horrors of the heart, which means you'll start like body and mind stress, but it's a stress which relates to reality getting distorted. And then resources is also a stress. So rather than you saying, I've got 50 gold pieces, the whole system works on you've got like gold piece hit points. So you could take damage that may lose you resources. And the explanation of that is maybe you're swimming underground and the monster grabs you and you have to shake off your money belt and it grabs that and swims away kind of thing. So there's some really interesting concepts in it. And once you get a certain amount of stress, you start taking these kind of like permanent damages which start having a negative effect.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's almost like leveling down.
I like that. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, that's kind of
cool.
cool.
Rather than taking, rather than it just being a damage number, it ends up with a penalty with something that happens. And then, of course, in between sessions, you level up. The leveling up, however, is weird.
Because everything you've said so far has been normal.
Well, no. This is where it gets really weird. And this is where I think is where this game is going to live or die with people. Because you don't just go on an adventure and get some XP at the end and then choose some skills at the end of adventure to level up. You pre-order your adventure.
What does that mean?
Before the session begins, when I said you've got these driving forces?
Yeah.
These things that make you want to go into the heart.
Mm-hmm.
every single character has got a list of what they call beats. And there's minor beats, major beats, and Zenith beats. The Zenith beat is basically your end of the campaign. It's what you want to do to finish the campaign. And it may be, if you're, for instance, if you're one of the wizards who's after ultimate power, it's like, I find the ultimate power and pull off the ultimate spell.
Mm-hmm.
The minor beats may be things like, you take certain damage, or you convince someone to do something bad for you, or you use your master's name to get what you want. But you don't tick these at the end of the session to say that you've done them. You say you're going to do them at the beginning of the session. And then it's up to the GM to bring them into the story.
Okay.
So again, it's tied into the kind of this backstory, this heart-changing reality. And it's supposed to be the heart gives people what it thinks they want. So the idea is supposed to be that you are saying what you want to do and the heart is giving it to you.
Does it do that like it's trying to do it intentionally well for you? Or is it like wishing with a genie where it's a very literal and probably bad version of what you actually want?
No, because what you're saying is what you're going to do in the session. So as I said, it may be, in this session, I'm going to take damage. Mm-hmm. So some of them can be negative. So a lot of them actually are things that negatively affect you. Or it could be, I'm going to convince someone using my brawn to do what I want. It's simple sentences like that.
Okay.
And they're basically just actions that you want to happen. As I said, it calls them beats because they're supposed to be story beats. These are the things which are going to happen in this session.
Okay.
And every time you complete a beat, you get a minor beat gets you a new minor power, a major beat gets you a new major power, and then the Zenith beat is you get that and you get some game-ending power. Most people who use their Zenith ability, that's it. The character gets retired. You're never going to play with them again because they've either disintegrated or died or ascended or descended to whatever. Which is the other interesting thing is the game says your players are going to die at some point. In fact, the game says your eventual aim may be to die. Mm. Because really, and that's the crux of this, which is both interesting and quite difficult to get through to people, is the game is a tragedy. Your players are tragic beings stuck into whatever is driving them deeper into this nightmare.
Right.
I think that'd be quite... I really like the sound of this idea of choosing your beats and like pre-ordering your level up. I really like that. I think that could work really well when you've got a team of players that have gelled together. This is interesting.
But if you're then going to lose someone, or you're expecting to lose people.
I've spoken enough. Sid, Andy, why don't one of you tell us your thoughts on this system?
Would you like the polite version, or would you like the post-game rant version?
The post-game chat.
Let's start with the polite version, expand from there.
So while I was just saying that sounded interesting, I'm just looking at these shaking heads, kind of like reverse nodding dogs on either side of my screen, and it was quite off-putting.
Now, we've talked about this at length after each of the sort of, was it 4 sessions we had? 3 or 4 sessions?
3 sessions.
3 sessions.
3, yeah. We're going to have 4th, yeah.
Yeah. And
well, I mean, that's, I tell you, that's one thing to tell you. We gave up after 3 sessions.
Yeah.
And we did. We gave up. We sacked it in. We said, right, we've given it a fair whack.
Okay.
And I think I'll probably come back to this, but the ultimate conclusion of this was that we sacked it off after 3, but even after the first session, we were talking about, we're not really enjoying this. And then we tried again. We thought, no, we need to give it a chance. So we gave it a chance, and we played another one, and then we played a third one. And to be fair, the third session I think was probably the best one. But even after that, we decided this is the fact that we're forcing ourselves to play kind of speaks volumes about this, that we are not enjoying this, we are not doing well at this. Then, there are so many other RPGs out there that we do enjoy or can enjoy this. Let's go and play one of them. That was ultimately the conclusion I think that we pretty much came to, and that was the consensus of the group. However, Sid and I definitely, I think, are of the same mindset of this one.
I was a bit more generous initially, I think. I think it took me about the second session before I was pulling for my ejector seat handles, because I'd had enough by then.
Yeah.
It honestly, Rory, you've described it exactly how I felt before we started.
Right.
Everything that, Steve I didn't know as much as what Steve just said now, but ideas of pre-ordering it, kind of being a bit more in control than a normal game, all that stuff. It just sounded awesome. The concept sounded kind of interesting, kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't.
So where does it start to fall down then?
On the pre-ordering. So the first session, kind of, we had the luxury of not doing the pre-order to some extent, so you kind of play through it and you're all right. You kind of get to the end of it, and it was weird. We didn't know why we were doing stuff. We didn't really understand it. So, but after the first session, we went, all right, hang on a minute. Let's go and read a bit more of the rule book. Let's try and get a bit more of a handle on why it is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a fucking mistake.
Reading the rule book was a mistake.
Reading the rule book that was a
the
bad,
rule book
bad
is
thing to do.
Absolutely terrible.
Oh, it's
not because it's
bollocks.
bad, not because it's badly worded, not because like some board game rule books are really badly worded or badly organised, and it's really hard to find or understand stuff. This was fine because it's not a particularly complicated game, as Steve says. The actual rules and stuff are fairly light. They're easy to comprehend. The problem is the rule book is too nice, and it's basically, and I'm going to use this term and probably piss a lot of people off, and I don't care, it's very, very, very millennial. It's trying to be nice, but it's trying to present something dark and not offend people, and that boils my piss.
So in what way? Like what?
Because the way the game is set, as Steve says, it's the High Elves basically are a bunch of racist, elitist jerks. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's part of the lore of the game, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Have that in your lore of the game. Basically make some kind of horrible feudal system where the guys at the top are dicks, much like our current political system. But it then goes on to say, I mean, you can play pretty much whatever character you like in the game, and it even says you can go as far as to say you can be one of those characters. You can play one of the High Elves. That's fine. And you know what? I'm on board with that as well. But it also goes on to say, but don't play it like that because that might offend someone.
Oh.
Right.
Don't play the
off.
stereotype of what the character is. So
Exactly.
That was about page 5, so that's a bit further into the getting pissed off. Page 1, I think it was.
Oh. Preface.
Page one says, we know that you roll a number of dice. Sometimes it's one dice. Oh, in brackets, yeah, we know it's not a dice, but we're going to call it a dice anyway. That was the trigger, right? That was enough at that point. That set us off the deep end.
Yeah, we know it's not correct,
know it's
but
wrong,
we're not going to do anything
care.
about it.
Oh, look at us with my rolled up jeans and my cafe latte with half a twist of lemon in it. Cough.
So hold on. Your objections to this game are that they don't like using the word die. They prefer dice, and that they didn't want you to be nasty in the game.
Oh,
That's your
there's
objection.
more, mate. There's more. There is so much more.
Right, hang on. Let me put it into context a little bit. And John, we'd actually already played 2 sessions at this point, and I gave him the full copy of the rule books. I give him like the starter rules to just to try and get us in. And I decided to share like the full copy of the rule book. And it was fascinating watching my Facebook Messenger chat as you could tell at which page the two of them were at in real time. As they just kept hitting these things. And I think by this point we were already at the point where we've, as Sid said, half of the second session is ready to eject. And Andy had said at the first session he wasn't happy with it. So at this point, I think the two of you were already pissed off with the game, and so you found the flaws easier.
That's probably true.
I
But at the same
think
time,
that is very fair. But you know, we did get to the end of it, and Andy and I did say to each other, "Look, we are dicks. We know we're dicks, right? But we know what we are." So we thought maybe it's us. Are we the problem?
Yes.
So we went into the third session thinking differently. We thought, look, we've read the book. There's a few things we don't like, but let's try and engage with what they're trying to do. You know, and we thought, let's give it a shot. Let's really throw ourselves at it and try and park our prejudice. And Andy's right. It was probably the best session we had. The last session we had was by far the best session. But it was still shit.
You had to change the way you wanted to play the game.
Yeah, it stopped being fun and became work. It's probably the best description I can put on it.
Right, so for you to have fun, you had to stop having fun so that you could
wasn't
not hate
fun,
the
that's the
game.
problem.
It wasn't
Rory.
fun. That
It
was the
wasn't
problem.
fun,
It
that was the
became
problem.
really mechanistic. We had to try. You know, at one point, Andy picked a beat. I think that he had to die or take damage or something.
Oh,
So
take some
for
stress,
about 2 hours of the game, he was just desperately trying to roll dice to take hits. Yeah?
Yeah.
And you think, well, you know, you'll throw a dice and you'll take hit. Awesome, winning. He couldn't roll to get hit, right? So we were walking down and down a stairwell, and he's going, "Oh, I know this thing hurts me. I'll just grab another bit of this mold and chomp on it. Oh, I'll roll my dice. Oh, I haven't taken any damage. Oh shit! I'll walk down another flight of stairs.
I'll do it again.
I'll pull some more
I'll do
off.
it again. I'll do it again. And
And
that
it
was
was
the,
like-
that's the problem with
He was quite literally eating worms to try and get a stomachache at this point, because that's what his beat said to do.
Yeah, basically take some whatever type of mental stress. I think it was basically my character was trying to go mad, so I forced the issue. And this is the problem with the pre-order system. You know what you need to achieve, and you know what you're trying to achieve. Therefore, you're going to try your damnedest to achieve it. Screw the rest of the party, which is basically what I did. I forced the issue. I didn't let the dice play out. I didn't let the story play out. I just basically forced the game to do what I wanted. And I found that really, really annoying. And I'm sure probably the rest of the party did, because I was basically, no, GM, I want to do this and this and this. I just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until I get what I want.
Okay.
And I did.
Quick question on this pre-ordering then. Can you literally choose anything? Can you just make up your own sentence? Or
No.
you choose
There's a
from a
list.
There's a list.
It's a predefined list, because this list is set by your
Class.
Oh, what's it called?
Yeah.
It's effectively your class. yeah.
Okay, and is there if you do not meet this beat, do you have any negative?
You don't get a skill
You don't get an
upgrade.
upgrade. Okay.
There's no punishment. There's just there's no benefit.
Okay.
And there's presumably a limited number of these minor beats and major beats that you have available.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it sort of forces your hand to choose what will happen. Like it's got to be in these categories, sort of thing.
To the point where, when we said we called it after the third session, but we did the full third session. So what you're supposed to do is pick your beats at the end of the session. So you should finish like 15 minutes before you intend to finish. Go through which beats and say, did you meet them? Yes. Well done. You can level up. Which beats do you want in the next session? So everyone did their beats based on where we were in the story. We all looked at the list and went, well, we know exactly what's happening next week, because there's no other way it can go down.
Which is rubbish.
And it was at that point when we called it, because we basically said, well, there's no point playing next week, because we already know exactly what's going to happen in this session. For everyone to meet their beats, because what the game basically says is it's now my responsibility to make a story where there's the opportunity for those beats to be met.
And I think that was the important thing. But if we'd realised that on session 1, we'd have been done by session 2. And that was our... So when I said we engaged after session 2 into the third one was how you're maybe supposed to play it. Probably not, because I still think we didn't really get it. But by the end of the third session, I was like, well, hang on a minute. I can see my end now, Steve. I can pick my Zenith thing and I can go and make... And for the last hour of the second session...
Hilariously, I got my Zenith by accident.
Yeah, but for the last hour of the second session, I was going, well, if I orchestrate my activities here, because it's my choice, I can tell Steve I'm going to do this, or Andy, I'm going to do this. I'll just make sure I've organised my last hour of my game so that by the end of it, I can pick that and I can make this finish.
And you said,
And I was like, well,
so as you just
where's
said
the
there,
fun?
Sid, you said you could, if you'd have known that at the beginning of when you started playing, you could have been done by the end of session 1. So when you say done, you mean you've accomplished your character
I'd
arc.
have hit my Zenith. Yeah, because I could have planned a particular route through my game, and as long as my fellow characters didn't get in my way or I didn't do anything that broke the rules, I could speed through the game as quick as I want. Was the impression I got. I didn't have to join in this organised kind of cooperative storytelling. I don't know what the hell it's called.
That was going to be my next question.
Isn't what I thought it was.
So when you're picking your beats for the following session, is that a collaborative discussion that you have that, well, if I do this and you do this, they'll work together so we can do this thing in the story to hit this kind of narrative section? Or is it very much selfishly, I want to do X, Y, and Z, screw the lot of you?
There's nothing stopping you from doing it either way.
So it sounds a lot like this game, in terms of that role-playing, bringing it back to almost the theatrical point of view, is that it's almost a game about upstaging each other.
I don't think it is. I think the intention of the game, although it's very unclear in the rulebook, is that you are supposed to play it collaboratively, and that you're supposed to talk about it, and that right, as a team, we're going to do this as a group, and blah 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 blah. But in my opinion, Sid, we all talked about this actually as a group, and Sid had a very differing opinion until I talked him round about. He basically took that opinion that, yeah, it's a collaborative thing. We should do this. We should do that. I said, no, because the very, very nature of this, that I would like to do this and I would like to do that in my next session, makes it very, very selfish. Because if you all decide that you want to do whatever it is you want to do, it puts an enormous amount of, I'm going to say pressure, but not in a horrible sense, on the DM to basically work some kind of horrendous, convoluted horse shit out of the order that's just basically gone his way. Yeah. The DM has literally no control over what the players choose, and if this order comes in, it's then up to the DM to actually make this reality happen. And to me, the whole idea of role-playing is that the players adapt to the world, not the world adapting to the players. Now, I know Heart's a bit weird like that, but that's not role-playing. That's basically forcing the DM to do some weird, contrived story that suits everybody's millennial desires, and that's bollocks.
It sounds a bit like a really good D&D session, let's say, for me, is one where there's a nice, interesting story you can get your teeth into, but you have some agency in what happens in that. But there is like a story arc. There's something that's happening that you're kind of following. The best ones, you're not exactly sure like what's going on underneath, but really the story is on rails. And this sounds like the opposite's happening, where you as a player are setting out the rails of this is exactly how this train's going to go, and then the DM's just got to kind of paint the picture.
Yeah, that's exactly it, John.
Which does sound a little bit
more
like,
or less.
Well, what's the point in actually playing the session if you've already set out what's going to happen?
Precisely,
It's
that
exactly
was exactly my argument, John.
Exactly the problem. And I was more generous than Andy until I read the rule book. I must admit that was where I came off my rails. But it doesn't. You almost kind of. Steve said it was the easiest games he had to DM because you kind of just let us pre-order it.
It was easiest to prep for because I couldn't prep. Yeah. It's one of those games where it's a prepless game. So the idea is the GM comes in and just goes, right, have at it, boys. What you doing? And I've got to fill in the blanks.
And so for a while, I mean, the whole thing about reading the rule book, I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm struggling to create my world, my story, and wonder if it's because I don't have enough content or background in the game, or I need some fodder to pull on. D&D is really accessible. You can fit into dragons and knights and all that stuff. Alien we can slot into like it's a glove. Yeah, this is just it's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. And the problem with that is it wants to be different. It wants to be bonkers. It wants to be different, but in a way that it's like putting a spike pit, right, in a child's play area. It'd be padded with soft foam spikes. Oh, just in case they fall and hurts. That's the point of a spike pit, right? And it tries to protect you. And the button, right? The button. So they have this concept, right, in the game,
right. I'm going to say as well, I'm going to say before you just go, this is quite common in online games, and I would caveat to say we don't really need this because... I mean, I've heard about it, I've known about it, right? And in other games, I would probably have gone, yeah, whatever. But I was riled already, and I think, so maybe I am being unfair, but there's this whole concept of having like a button, they call it, in the middle of your table that you're playing on. And if at any point I've done something, or anyone's at the table has done something that makes you uncomfortable, you have to touch the button.
Oh.
Well, having to touch the button makes me uncomfortable now because of COVID restrictions.
Oh, mate, well,
make sure the button's been disinfected. But this is the thing, exactly. Your reaction there, Rory, was exactly ours, and we thought, well, hang on a minute. The whole point is that they're basically writing a rule book for a game that is trying to have it both ways. They're trying to make something dark and twisted and weird and screwed up, and have this hierarchy and play it nasty and all these horrible characters, play them, but don't do that because that's nasty and it might upset somebody. You can't have it both ways. Either set the scene and let the players decide what they want to do, and if they don't want to play a dark and twisted nasty game where they might get upset, fine, go off and play something else. Go and play Candy Crush Saga or something. But if you're going to play a dark RPG, you've got to be prepared for some weird shit.
Now, I will caveat to say that because we are reasonably well-adjusted players and none of us are fucking weirdos.
Or at least we're all weird in the same way.
Yeah.
No, because I've read so many horror stories about people playing in D&D campaigns, which have got stuff in which you're like, okay, that is beyond the line.
Yes, that's fair.
The lines now are dotting the distance.
Fair.
You see, you're absolutely I think you're correct, Steve. I think it is a big thing on the people go in this weird rape fantasy thing and all that kind of weird shit happens out there and some of the stuff I've read. But the thing I struggled with is, for a while I was thinking, if you're a really close knit group, like you said, if you could play off each other and have a collaborative story and go through it. Right, and that's what the game wants to engender. It wants to build that cooperation. Well, hang on a minute. If I can play like that with a bunch of people, then I can turn around to them and turn their face. Stop! Don't. I don't need the button. So I couldn't get my head around what it was trying to do, and I think for me that summed up the whole game. I just couldn't understand. Was it one thing? Was it another thing? Was it just sitting on the fence and getting a sore arse is where I eventually ended up? Because it kind of wanted everything to be lovely and fair. Oh, you've got ultimate choice. And it's almost like, well, but I've spent money on this and I expect at least you to try and write a story that I could follow or give me a few key points along the journey rather than just saying, oh, you could do this. Oh, but you don't have to do that. You can do this thing over here or... I don't know. I tried to find some good in it, and for about a session I thought I did, and then I read the book, and then the third session happened, and at the end of the third session I think it was like, well, it was the pre-ordering. I couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't find a way to make that fun because I think we as a group are quite spontaneous. You hit the nail on the head, John, earlier when you said you want a bit of agency to go and play a game, and that needs moments. That's kind of built on the fly. It's not something I could predict that 8:30 on Thursday I want to do this specific thing at this specific time, and if everything has not gone my way by that point, then I'm gonna not do it or I'm gonna force it, and it just didn't gel with me, unfortunately.
No, I think you're right. The forced element of it really ruined it for me. I got to the point, it was like, well, I know ultimately my character's going to die. I know what I'm going to be doing this session. What's the point? Let's just assume it's all happened and play something else.
Is it that you know that you're going to die, or it's your objective to die because
Both.
That's what gets you the points?
Both. The whole point is that it is a tragedy, and all of these characters are ultimately going to not necessarily. I mean, it's not 100% you're going to die, but 99.9%. Whatever you do at the end of the game is probably going to either end your life or drive you mad. So you might as well not carry on.
You're going to lose, and that's okay. That isn't the problem. I mean, there is some fun in that. There's fun in knowing you're a doomed character. Otherwise, why do we read Shakespeare tragedies? Why do we rewatch reenactments of stuff? We watch it because there is fascination in the tragedy element. But the problem with this was to how you got there. It stopped. The journey became
work.
Yeah, it was effort. It was so hard, and me and Andy, we were in a session. We can bounce a lot of stuff off each other normally, and we can work fairly adaptively on our feet. This just seemed to, I don't know, it just broke us.
I didn't want to say this when we're actually playing this, but when I was learning the game as well, I found it very difficult to work out what the game actually was. The rulebook makes a big point about how it's a storytelling game, so it's not a traditional RPG, which is basically their code of saying it's not D&D. It's a collaborative storytelling game. They never really explains what that actually means. It never really helped you and guided you as to say, right, well, how should I run a session?
Mm-hmm. There's no example. Here's how you would go.
There's no really good example. Now, I haven't used this analogy yet, but the game, this whole idea of the storytelling and the prep plus DM stuff is Blades in the Dark.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Blades in the Dark does it infinitely better.
Agreed.
Not only does it's better structured, so the way Blades in the Dark works so well because it's got these really structured points in how you play the game, but also in the rulebook explains exactly how you do everything with examples, with those little written ones where, John says this, Sid says this kind of thing, and the DM says this, which are all missing from Heart. Heart just kind of leaves that. In fact, Heart purposely leaves stuff out. I actually had to go listen to a podcast where they interviewed the designers to kind of get what was really the feel of the game. And they made a big point about saying, oh, yeah, we don't say what all the equipment is. Like, the equipment list is like, oh, there's an Arabesque rifle. And that's all it is. Doesn't say, oh, this is a long rifle, a short rifle, how it's powered. And they say, oh, yeah, we did that on purpose so that players can choose what they want it to be. But it felt like that approach had been taken too much in the rules all the way through.
If you want to arm a player to be creative like that, you need to give them a setting. You need to give them a context in which to make shit up. And this is for me was a big sort of thing comparison. Just before this, I think we'd played Alien or something. And, you know, we had 5 of us drop into a game of Alien, and we've never played Alien RPG before, but we had context in the Alien environment. We kind of knew what a pulse rifle was. We knew what a spaceship was. You can work with that. You've got some starters to kind of just cling on to get a grip of something. There's all in this game in Heart.
Yeah,
there was
when
nothing
I drop you into a moth market, and you're like, a moth market? Why are we buying moths?
Is that like a goth market but misspelled, or?
No, I think the issue is it's not relatable. That's the problem. Yeah. With any of the other games we've played, even Blades, I quite like Blades, and it's slightly steampunky, but it's a lot more narrative than, say, something like D&D, but it still has stuff that's relatable.
It does sound really interesting, but very flawed. So I like creative games, but the rails don't sound like they would work for me either, because you're predisposing the rails and you're laying bare how it's all going to work. So I think from your description, I would be out of this one.
It's to me as a GM, I kind of half want to steal the ideas to put into other games. Some of the batshit crazy ideas will work nicely in isolation in another RPG. But otherwise, if you want a storytelling game, go play Blades in the Dark.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you actually enjoyed that nonsense, please give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If not, you can chat to us on Twitter. We are collectively at Polyhedron C. I'm at Wahoffle Madenga.
I'm at Sonic H with a 0.
And I'm at Rory J. Summers.
John is John_Cage. I'm assuming you're not on Twitter.
I'm not clever enough for all that stuff. Maybe I should join Twitter. I'll think about that one.
We're also on Facebook and the Board Game Geek Guild 2726. We also are on polyhedroncollider.com, which I believe you've just posted a review on, Rory.
I did. I did a review of Cactus Town, which we haven't talked about because I'm the only one that's played of the group.
That's the first review that's gone on there in 6 months. We will be back soon with some more tabletop gaming chat, but for now, thanks very much for listening and happy gaming.
Totally bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Happy gaming, folks. Catch you later.
John, you really put a man off his stroke when he's taking a piss.
It's not the first time I've been accused of that.
No. Was it the music or was it the conversation about the cave?
It was the music more than anything else. I didn't follow the rhythm.